All right, EA Ermor turned 51. We finished our research in thaumaturgy. We hit 5. This is mainly for Soulslay and will provide us a pretty good answer to a lot of different supercombatants. And now we are working on evocation. We are aiming at evocation 6, which is where Wailing Winds and Wind of Death are, which are air death crosspath spells, and something that EA Ermor gets access to and are both quite potent. I tend to like to split my research, but this is definitely an argument against splitting, because while it will take you a while to reach your first 7 or whatever it is you're aiming at, that's quite high up, you can then race up a bunch of other paths pretty quickly. The low levels, once you have a lot of research, go really, really fast. There's a dire portent, always a good sign, and it's from Niflheim. That's not great since they're our neighbor and we're pretty worried about them. However, it's Mother Oak, so as far as globals go, this isn't the end of the world, so they'll be getting an additional 10 nature gems a turn. Not great, but yeah, could be worse. We cast Astral Window. We're taking a look at a province. We'll look at that in a bit. We try to do some remote nature site searching. It does not work out for us. Our regular site searching also does not work out. And then on to the battles. So this is that same raiding group from Russ, the Bears with the Priest. Moving on forward. They bump into just a little bit of province defense, actually probably some retreats, considering, and there's no undead leadership here either. So this is something went wrong previously for Ulm, and this is probably just what's left over. So just one province defense. Not sure actually why the woodsman retreated offhand, but yeah, these two fellows not going to be able to take on these bears, although not all the bears were able to get blessed. So let's see if any bears were able to get taken out. Nope, they're able to roll over this province pretty easily. And yeah, big mystery on those woodsmen. I guess they just failed the morale check early, maybe due to HP loss from the long dead collapsing actually. So that's definitely rough for Ulm. This isn't a great force, right? So, we know that Ulm has an army. They could certainly deal with this, but, the fact that they're not able to respond to this means they're probably dealing with other things. In fact, we know they're dealing with other things because the same province gets hit, this time by Vanheim. So I think the name of the other things that they're dealing with is Vanheim at minimum. And there's a raiding group of Vanheers here, including an unkitted Vanhurst, who's probably just here for bless duties. I'm not sure if we've seen Vanheim's bless yet. But just to remind myself, let's take a quick look. It looks like a fairly normal elf bless. Yeah, so full resistances without poison, though, notably. And that is because they've also taken bark skin, which I do think is quite good on Vanheers. Of course, that does mean that they're actually only at 5 fire resistance, but with the level of protection they have, that's probably okay. Some Undying, which I think the Vanheers certainly don't mind and opponents won't love. Vanheers kill things really effectively, so even if the Vanheer is going to die after the fight, if they're able to continue on and continue killing, that's going to be really painful. A little bit of extra strength I think never goes amiss, though once Vanheers berserk, they do get a pretty significant bonus to their strength, and then magic weapons, which I think is pretty necessary on Vanheers. They just have mundane weapons otherwise, and they're so useful. It would be a real shame, to have just ethereal things, and there's quite a bit out there that needs magic weapons. So yeah, these bears are really going to struggle, but some of them are able to get blessed, and we can see that the magic resistance on these Vanheers, while much better than just, a normal human unit, right, magic resistance 15, still not enough for them to just shrug off the blood vengeance, especially considering, how many hit points these bears have. So there's quite a few casualties here for the Vanheers, but they do manage to rout the bears. It looks like just the priest escapes. So that kind of works out for Vanheim, but they do lose 5 Vanheers, which is pretty painful. And like these great bears, they cost nature gems to summon in, so, who lost more? I don't know. I feel like Russ probably doesn't care too much about this raiding group and is happy with a result like this. I think I would be happy with a result like this, although I don't know the exact conversion of those great bears. Certainly, if they cared about them, they wouldn't have, pushed them so deep unsupported. So I think Russ is probably happier with that result, though Vanheim does come away with the province. And then this is where we were scrying. So we scryed underwater, and this is on top of one of Oceania's forts. And we have possibly a breakout attempt, because I believe this fort was under siege. And this is what Niflheim has brought to the table. So he's got 2 Sea Kings here and a point buffer who looks like she's now retreating. So probably made both of them ethereal, I would imagine. Yeah, so these are 2 ethereal Sea Kings. And their underwater regeneration is pretty fierce. I believe this stacks with their normal regeneration. We'll have to take a look. They probably will be taking hits because their protection is good, 20, but not enough that they're not going to take damage, especially from what they're up against. But assuming they can connect and they have been given some gear to help with their attack skill, they're definitely going to be dealing a lot of damage. The Gate Cleaver just deals a ton of damage and is also really useful at breaking down walls. This guy has been given a Berserk Axe and a Vine Shield, classic combination. So I think these guys are going to be decently scary, although they are up against a mix of Oceania's Sacreds as well as some of just their regular cavalry, or I guess they're really more like Centaur, and Oceania's Bless, which I do think we've looked at recently, poison resistance, but the death weapons here I think is going to be the most important component, right? Because that's armor negating, although it's not a ton of damage, so I do think they're going to struggle a bit to overcome the regeneration on these Sea Kings. And of course, not all of these are Sacreds. There are some Bishop Fishes here who can obviously do the blessing, although I definitely missed this when I was playing this game. They've been given some penetration gear as well as an Eye of Aiming. So Holy Threes can of course smite. Yeah, this guy's got even more penetration gear, and smite is a magic resistance spell, and I'd never really considered giving Holy Threes penetration gear. I'm not 100% sure that works, but I'll have to double check. I feel like it should. So that could be kind of dangerous, though I imagine the Sea Kings have decent magic resistance. Yeah, it looks like 18 here as well. Yeah, 18 for both of them, which is high, but certainly not unbeatable, especially with the penetration gear that these guys have been given. But it does look like they also, I think, Breath of Winter they cast on themselves, so they're surrounded by a cold aura, which there's no cold resistance on this Bless, so that's definitely relevant. These guys are going to start fatiguing out. Yeah, we can see that they're pretty fatigued. So this is not going well for Oceania, though we can see, a bit of damage on these Sea Kings, but yeah, they have pretty significant regeneration here. I think they're going to be able to come away with this without too much difficulty. There are some bodyguards back here. It looks like these guys might be out of range on the smite. Different smites have different ranges. Yeah, now there's some smites coming out, so possibly a case where advance and cast spells would have been helpful, but risking all that gear on these mages, yeah, advance and cast spells is risky. So I can understand not wanting to set them on that. And now it's just a question of, if they can, let's see, Syllable of Death. That is one of the shorter range ones, although I believe that has a save or die component. Yeah, so that is true. In addition to the damage component, which went through on this Sea King, there is a save or die component, but it looks like the Sea King got lucky and saved, and we are getting some routes here from at least some of the bodyguards. And that cold aura is really going to start to matter. And I think I just missed. Yeah, one of those Sea Kings just died. So it does look like, the Bishop Fish managed to get rid of one. So we'll see, if they get lucky and manage to get rid of the other one. No, it doesn't look like it. Armies of Oceania are routed. Though it does look like these Bishop Fish are going to escape. Well, maybe. So yeah, that's the advantage of not being on advance and cast spells. So Niflheim does come away with that. But that is a pretty painful victory. I think it's like 55 water gems to bring in a Sea King, and Sea King had some gear as well. So yeah, we'll see if Niflheim can sustain those kind of losses. But this is definitely one way for a land nation to attack an underwater nation. And then let's see, we have a battle between Russ and the Independents, and this is the throne next to their capital. So just pinging it perhaps, or everybody's retreating here, and the Vine Men are just disappearing. So Russ gets a decent amount of, I think, mostly seducers, but anyway, they can do assassinations, and so I think all the commanders of this throne have been assassinated, and then you can just send in whatever. So yeah, that was very slick, and works out for them pretty well. Although yeah, okay, they were defeated, so I guess they must have had the wizard set to retreat, and he retreated off before everything could die. Yeah, it looks like there's a few Vine Men left. So not the end of the world. They'll definitely be able to take that throne from 5 remaining Vine Men that have no magic leadership anyhow. And then, yeah, this is Abyssia's attempt to grab that Demon Lord. Yeah, so here he is. He's got a couple serpent fiends near him or with him, as well as the fellow who summoned him, and then yeah, a little bit of creeping doom. So it looks like he does come with some gems. Yeah, so he's got nature gems, fire gems, and blood slaves. So we'll see. Abyssia has brought a lot of troops as well. Some of the sacreds, really pretty similar to the kind of armies that they've been using. And yeah, there you go, Hellbind Heart. So that is the spell that they're hoping to capture the Demon Lord with. I don't think it has the longest range, so they may have been targeting like bugs or something like that. Definitely they have not managed to get... Okay, yeah, they got the serpent fiends and they got imps. Although actually they probably just summoned their own imps, I'm thinking, because there's no way they managed to capture this number of imps. And then let's see, some bloodletting, so just a battlefield wipe. So I think this is a combination like, hey, let's grab this Demon Lord if we can, but like also let's not lose the army. So it's a mix of Hellbind Heart as well as some attack spells. Although a battlefield-wide wipe is a bit dangerous. Yeah, bloodletting doesn't do a ton of damage, like just one cast on its own, but we can see that this Abyssian caster has taken some damage, and these guys don't have a ton of hit points, so definitely a bit risky. But yeah, it does look like... I don't think they managed to capture him. Let's take a look. No, so it looks like they killed the Blood Mage, and then they probably just triggered an HP route, or possibly the Demon Lord just, failed his morale check. Either way, he retreated off, and so that means he'll just die in the retreat. And so sadly, Abyssia does not come away with a Demon Lord. But a cool attempt, and very kind of them to let us know that they were up to that, because always interested to see these things happening, get ideas for what you can pull off, what works, what doesn't work. And then here we have a raiding group from Oceania, just looks like mundane troops, and they run into a Scrotty. So I'd say they are screwed, especially since this Scrotty has a lot of kit and is a hero, unequaled obesity. So a lot of hit points. That's actually probably a good one for Scrotty. A lot of times that's not a great trait for thugs or super combatants because it also provides a lot of extra fatigue. But Scrotty, they tend to wear relatively light gear anyway and rely on their regeneration. So having that higher hit point pool means they regenerate more. So probably better on a Scrotty than a lot of other thug chassis. And they have no problem cleaning up a mundane raid. Though I do think, small groups of mundane units raiding lots of different provinces is a pretty effective way to fight. Of course, if you can instead have, a bunch of kitted werewolves raiding a bunch of provinces, that's going to be more effective. But, not every nation gets werewolves. Or rather, Scrotty. You do always have the option for vanilla werewolves, which are not great. And yeah, it looks like we're being attacked by brigands. This is in TNN's territory, so we don't have a lot of province defense there. Speaking of brigands, here's some in our territory, causing some unrest. That's not great. And then we get a few people immigrating. It does say a huge number. 470 is not that many, though. And then one of our augurs foresees a major event. Stars are right for alterations. I probably should try to take advantage of these a little more. We definitely do not in this game. And then, yeah, we get attacked by brigands, and our lone centurion is not able to hold the province. And I'll catch you guys after the cut. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. Of course, most importantly, we will be attacking TNN's capital this turn. They went home and stayed home, so everything that we've seen, possibly not including that sacred raiding group that is stealthy, so that could be not anywhere, but could be headed deeper into our territory, but there's a good chance that it also came home. But certainly all the non-stealthy stuff is here. We do see the Pretender here, so that's what we're going to be up against, and what we're going to be sending at it. We have seen a lot of this stuff before, but the main spells of this army are going to be Flaming Arrows, which of course a classic, a standby. Rigor Mortis, which we've talked about how we do have some skeleton production in this army, but perhaps not as much as we should to be relying on that. But we do at least now have, let's see, Relief in here, although I'm not sure we'll be able to cast it. Sometimes this lies to you, but sometimes it's correct. So we'll see if Relief goes off. But that will help against our own fatigue play for our mundane troops, of which we have many. And then, of course, Serpent's Blessing, which is incredibly critical since we've already been hit with a Foul Vapors trap. We do have some fire elementals mixed in. These guys, are towards the front. So we've got, skeleton summoners and fire elemental summoners in the front. And then probably the other thing is we do have 2 fellows who've been decked out with some penetration gear, not quite full penetration gear, but they are going to be doing some soul slaying. Well, they should have been doing some soul slaying. It looks like I did not update this script since we just got it this turn. So yeah, sadly I forgot to update this. The spellcasting AI will sometimes cast Soul Slay off script. It really depends on how fatigued out the mage is, because it's a somewhat fatiguing spell, but also particularly the amount of magic resistance that they're up against. So hopefully I fix this one next turn. Yeah, and same issue on our other guy. So this would be a significantly scarier army if I had the right scripting. And then we just have a boatload of troops here, right? So we've got a line of legionary, some slingers, some more legionaries in case it didn't work out, and then just more guys in the back to catch flyers, as well as a lot of our equite, the devils of course as well. We do have to be at least a little bit concerned about air elementals. I will say we do have some bodyguards, but especially for our Lars, I think we could have. There should be more bodyguards in this army, basically, is what I'm saying. But that is the benefit of hindsight. At this point, I was not quite aware how critical they were. So anyway, that's what we're sending in. We are splitting out just a few equite with a priest, right, to do some raiding, and we're probably just going to try to, clean out the rest of TNN's territory, make sure nobody else, manages to get a hold of it while we break down the walls here and take the capital. And that's pretty much the majority of what we're doing. We are doing a little bit of troop recruitment here. We talked about how eventually we're going to want another force to attack Agartha from multiple directions, but we've ceased recruiting on our border. It does look like Niflheim is at least somewhat busy, right? This is where we saw one of those Sea Kings die, and then I think this is the group so it wasn't a raid. It looks like Oceania was just trying to poke out, thinking that maybe the Scrati moved on, I'm guessing. But yeah, Niflheim is locking down, it looks like the remainder of Oceania's land presence. But still, Niflheim looks somewhat busy, although that said, it doesn't really look like, I thought maybe that Machaca and Niflheim were fighting, but if they are, it's pretty low level, because there hasn't really, been many changes. There's even just an unforted throne hanging out here. Haven't really seen any changes with Saramatia's territory either. So I think Niflheim is probably currently only fighting Oceania. Of course, we are also recruiting equite of the Sacred Shroud, although not full recruitment. We don't have a ton of income. We are, after all, a single capital nation on turn 51. Not a great position. We are at least doing more forging of lightless lanterns, and we have full mage recruitment, definitely, although it has mostly switched over to just augurs. I don't think we're getting any throne mages. We've talked about how these guys, they're useful, but not super useful for us, and augurs are pretty darn useful, although we are still getting some augur elders. And then in terms of our other scouting, nothing too interesting, just trying to get better eyes on Russ and figure out, okay, well, how we've seen roughly how tall they are, but we don't know exactly how wide they are. So, we're trying to figure that out, get a sense of their shape. We are also starting, to push scouts into Vanheim's territory, since, our ally in Abyssia is thinking about attacking them, and also we already are neighbors with Vanheim, so we are now interested in what Vanheim is up to, although it looks like, they're going after Ulm at the moment, and while Ulm does have a large army left, it looks like they're more or less down just to their capital, so this probably won't take too much longer, although there's another nation state up here in but similarly, I don't think this is going to take Vanheim's attention for too long, since we know that Vanheim is relatively large, although Calum does fit in here somehow. We don't know exactly how, but anyway, Vanheim is definitely now going to be our concern. So I think that more or less covers turn 51. All right, EA Ermor, turn 52. We finished research and evocation level 5, headed to 6, which is our target we've discussed. Bringing in some vine ogres. This is mostly to serve as soul vortex batteries, which we will demonstrate at some point in our quest for infinite skeletons, always with our stone sphere, trying to keep an eye on things. I think we're looking at that same underwater fort that's under siege from Niflheim. Our site searching missing, sadly a very common event. We do manage to take control of a province from TNN where they left no province defense behind. Always nice to get a free province. And then we have a couple battles here. So we have Russ attacking some independents. Looks like a thug and some friends. So they've got a fully kitted cap-only mage. He has a single nature gem, which is a little interesting. Maybe for personal regen, or I guess possibly swarm. He doesn't need the gem for personal regen, but it would help for his fatigue. But yeah, decent gear, bit of a mix, right? We have like a relatively expensive item, but then also, you know, some cheaper, lower research items. Overall, more on the cheap side, other than the fact that it's full kit, and that's always expensive, because I think all these are 5 gem items except for the shield. It does leave him with pretty good elemental resistance across the board. No poison resistance, though he could certainly fix that with his nature paths. And protection is decent, but not super high, and then his skills are pretty good, especially considering he's in a cave, although he does have dark vision. That is coming from this helmet, and then yeah, he's got a frost brand to help clear squares, so this is a reasonably scary thug. Though definitely set up more for chaff clearing. And then his friend here is a prophet, also with full kit. This is a 10 gem item, so a little on the expensive side, but again, otherwise I think just, oh no, this is another 10 gem item, so fairly expensive in terms of air gems, but otherwise all 5 gem items. He also has full elemental resistance, although considerably lower elemental resistance. Although he has fear, I'm guessing, yeah, he's got the heroic trait that gives fear, which is one of the better ones, maybe one of the best ones, so that's pretty cool. And then they've got Jade Amazon here, who's probably here mainly just to give them Moss Body and also protection, it looks like. Ooh, and Body Ethereal. And they are up against a throne, it looks like. And this throne is mostly just garbage undead and Vinemen, although it does have these dog-headed fellows who are decently scary. 16 Pierce is nothing to sneeze at, but these guys are also Berserkers +2, so that'll increase their strength, so it's actually slightly higher than what we're seeing. And then it looks like there's some death mages back here. Yeah, not particularly scary death mages, so not going to be an overwhelming amount of skeleton production. This is an air death mage with a lot of gems, so a bit on the scarier side. Rust does have magic resistance on the Bless, so I think that'll help for things like Shadow Blast. But I think they're going to be more or less fine against everything except the dog-headed fellows, who I think will still really struggle, especially... Yeah, it looks like they managed to get protection, Moss Body, luck, Body Ethereal. Yeah, so protection 23, like still not fantastic, but when you combine it with the Moss Body and Mist Form, and like there's so many buffs on these guys. They have an Astral Shield and a Fire Shield, which like both of those are going to be problematic for all of this chaff. So unless the spellcasters can do something, I think these guys, ooh, yeah, air elementals, that's definitely a something. Yeah, we can see as soon as the air elemental gets in, that starts to become problematic, because these guys are not size 6, although they do have magic weapons and they, you know, decent skills, so they're able to get quite a bit of damage on the air elemental, but trample is definitely one way that these guys could die. That said, Body Ethereal is a reasonable defense against tramplers, not perfect, but it is helpful. This guy probably also gave himself, yeah, personal regeneration, and so when you layer all of that together, it's like, yeah, you'll take some chip damage from the trample sometimes, but then you'll just regenerate it back up, and since you're unlikely to be taking a lot of hits in a row with all these buffs layered on, air elemental's a little less scary than normal, especially since it looks like they only summoned one. Definitely had gems for more, but not very high air pathing, so managed to fatigue themselves out summoning it in, and it looks like they have routed. They're just asleep, so they can't get off the field. So yeah, I think this is going to work out for Russ pretty well, and a good example, you know, of how to use some thugs to take a throne more or less for free. I think they spent like 1 gem. And of course the mage turns, right? You always got to consider that, but yeah, I think totally worth it in this case. About as free as you're ever going to get for taking a throne. So like, yep, no losses. This sorceress I think retreated off, so possibly died in the retreat, but you know, a single Jade sorceress to trade for this throne, who probably did survive the retreat. Definitely a worthwhile trade, so nicely done by Russ. And then we have our most important event of the turn. We are attacking, and did TNN come out? No. They decided to stay home, so this is just province defense. Hopefully we will not spend gems here. I'm pretty sure we have reloads. But, you know, definitely been known to run light sometimes with my armies. And yeah, there's our mine burns, I think. Hopefully this, you know, it's a good thing they didn't patrol, because we can convert those mine burns into soul slays, assuming I do notice that. So yeah, our army has no problem with province defense. Let's see if we take any attrition. We do unfortunately lose some devils. Don't really have a lot in the way for flyers, so yeah, it's just kind of hard to avoid these guys attriting out, especially since their protection is not very good. So, you know, if you don't have some sort of army-wide protection buff or somebody that can put, you know, protection buff on the devils specifically, they're very killy, but they do tend to die as well. And we do also manage to lose an Equite of the Sacred Shroud, which is always sad. But still, we were up against, you know, a decent amount of province defense, and for Bulgar, not terrible. So, you know, we'll take it. And then our raiding group took control. I believe this was our raiding group, or possibly this was a scout, and that was our raiding group. Yeah, that took control of this province. Either way, it looks like TNN is quite low on money and has given up on province defense, more or less. So overall, this is going pretty well for us, assuming we can actually pull off the main fight. And then we have some unexpected events. We found one nature gem, hooray, barbarian horde. I don't know about unexpectedly, you know, kind of always expect barbarians. And then some famine, but we don't actually lose that many people. Death +1 is not great, although I think this is in a province that's, there might even be a well of pestilence there. So we're not too worried about that. So worldwide, magic +1, which is nice for us. We do not have any magic scales, so we will get full benefit from that. And then we've foreseen another major event that will occur. Isn't this what we said last turn? 3 months time? It must have been 4 months time. Anyway, the stars will be right for alterations relatively soon. Or, you know, that's at least what the birds tell us. And then it looks like Russ also got some unexpected barbarians who managed to take one of their provinces. And then here are our unexpected barbarians. And we have barbarian province defense, but their barbarians outnumber ours, so we lose that. We'll have to send somebody to retake that. And then let's see, the walls are critically damaged, so we did bring a lot of stuff, and that is quite helpful when you need to break into forts. So yeah, if TNN is going to sally out, they'll have to do that pretty much this turn, although I expect they won't, because if they wanted to fight in the field, they probably would have taken advantage of their province defense. And I will catch you guys after the cut. Alright, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. A relatively simple turn for us here. We're pretty much just sitting on top of TNN's capital and hoping to crack it next turn, and then we'll probably head in immediately. We have a pretty good idea of what's in there, and the longer we hang out, the more time we give them, you know, to summon more stuff in that we're going to end up having to fight. We will also hit, I think, yeah, we will finish our Evocation 6 research next turn, so we'll have Wailing Winds available, which I think is quite strong. I mean, it's quite strong always, but perhaps extra strong in an assault. Because any enemy units that retreat off immediately die. So even if we fail the assault, you know, as long as there's some retreats, we're going to get decent results out of that. If, you know, we can repeat the assault a few times, casting Wailing Winds each time. Not that we're hoping for or expecting a failed assault, but, you know, it is a nice silver lining in case things go wrong. We're going to continue our pretty limited raiding. We probably should have split out another group to start taking some of these independent provinces, but in some ways, since they mostly border, like this one's maybe a little more important, kind of just leaning on the fact that people are busy and are not going to want to deal with 60 barbarians, but frankly at this point in the game 60 barbarians is definitely not enough to prevent people from just kind of grabbing the province as they go about their business. But for these other provinces, they only border Agartha, and so since we're planning on attacking Agartha next anyway, it's less critical that, you know, we raid these as fast. And, you know, we did bring a ton of stuff here, but I do want this battle to go well, so feeling a little nervous about splitting off even more stuff to do raiding. Definitely with the benefit of hindsight, like we could have split out some legionaries, I think. You know, we wouldn't take that many legionaries to deal with 10 villains or however many villains are actually there. Now, whether or not we have the leadership to do that, yeah, we have a free centurion, so we could have pulled that off, but we did not. So that is what our army is up to. Recruitment wise, we are only recruiting Equite of the Sacred Shroud in the capital, and then we are also recruiting some of our our weaker infantry, sort of a combined, they'll patrol when we're not at war, and then we're planning on using these as like cheaper raiding groups. So we're going to want like a couple of these, right? We recruited some over here, probably recruit a few more, and then use them, to just take additional provinces. Mage recruitment remains more or less the same, with the notable exception of we are getting a throne mage this turn. So yeah, really hoping for that high astral roll, but we'll see. Definitely they are useful mages, they're just expensive, and we already have expensive, probably more useful mages, so bit of a toss-up, but we're going for one this turn. And then scouting wise, we haven't really caught too much that's new. We can just see that it's looking like Macone is relatively small. This is the throne that Russ managed to take. We can also see what Machaca has garrisoned Pangea with. So just some of their regular units, as well as some mechanical men, which I do approve of. I think that's a solid summon. So a reasonable garrison force, but again, probably indicative that, these two are not fighting. And then the Oceania situation more or less remains the same. Niflheim has this fort locked down, although they've brought some Great Eagles in, and they have cracked Oceania's last land fort, so we'll probably see a storm here next turn. And then in terms of research, for longer term goals, after we finish with Evocation, we're going to head up to Alteration 7. Fog Warriors is something we can kind of pull off with our Communion, though not incredibly easily. And then Enchantment 8 is nice. Mass Regen is there. Not super relevant for our human HP troops, but especially once you hit the late game and a lot of protection buffs come online, fights tend to be really grindy no matter how much HP units have, in which case Mass Regeneration is much better, and that is a spell we can cast. Also of note at that level are all the army-wide elemental resistance spells, and we are starting to hit the point, actually we're really past the point in the game where we might be seeing battlefield wipes like Firestorm and things like that. So since we have a giant Doom stack, spells like this are going to be really important in terms of keeping it alive. And then also Construction 7, which I think at this point I was mostly thinking about Weapons of Sharpness, which helps you cut through all those late game protection buffs, because you deal armor-piercing damage, but also Golem Construction, I think, is actually really useful for human HP nations. But yeah, I wasn't really considering this too much. It does cost a lot of Astral Pearls, and unfortunately our Astral income is not great. So yeah, I think that more or less covers turn 52.